Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blockbusters podcast powered by Market Across, the world's leading PR and blockchain agency. I'm Daniel, by the way. I've been with Market Across for a very long time, and today I'll be interviewing David, who I've also worked with now for several years and is doing some really awesome stuff in the space. It's always a pleasure to talk to him. David, I do just want to give you the floor to give a bit more details about what you're working on now, and of course, throughout the episode, we'll get into more nitty-gritty, have some questions prepared, and so just give us a quick intro, give us a bit of an ABC, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm working on a fairly atypical project for the crypto space. It's an actual moonshot. We're sending blockchain nodes into orbit on satellites, and not just nodes, but TEE hardware. So basically, we're enabling secure confidential compute up there in low Earth orbit. About myself, I'm a D guy, marketer, a growth strategist. It's been working in Web3 now since 2017. So I've seen a decent amount, I would say. I think that's as long as people who call themselves marketers and BD guys or growth strategists have been in the space. Before that, it was more like the pioneer era, before the professionals, so to speak, got in. And right now, my title is Head of Growth at SpaceComputer. And previously I had held the same title at another project called SPD or Subsquid, which is in the more deep infrastructure space. And there I got a really wide view in the whole industry.
By the way, quick side note, I know SpaceComputer recently just had an exciting announcement. You guys raised $15 million, is that right? 10 million?
10 million, yeah.
10 million. Still a lot. Still a lot. Yeah, so check that out. That's a really cool story. But back to you. I have a question about what pulled you into this like growth role in the first place. Like what drew you there?
Into this growth role or growth in general?
In general. Like what made David go even back to your Subsquid or SQD days where you would say something like, okay, cool, this is a company or a project or a team that I think I can get or help get from point A to point B in terms of growth. What made you go in that direction in the first place? How did you arrive at this place as being a professional that can like help teams grow, for example?
Yeah. So I would phrase this more like to somebody who would like to get into a position like what I'm in right now. Somebody who's new in the space, because I didn't get into it thinking that way. I got into it thinking I need a job, and that's really how it started. So back in 2017, there was this ICO boom, which for I think a lot of us in today's industry.
Which, by the way, fun just to put a pin in that. As of today, on the block, 2017 is any 2017 project is officially called a vintage project. Oh, wow. So you're officially a vintage worker, knowing all this stuff. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. Back in the ICO boom.
But this is already 2 years after, Ethereum mainnet. I thought I was late. So back then, I was just vaguely aware of crypto, of Bitcoin. And back then, it was usually Bitcoin and crypto that people said. And I was living in Russia at the time, rather fresh out of college, just doing odd jobs here and there, teaching English, these sorts of things, doing a little bit of translation. And one of my English students, he had a small marketing agency in Moscow, and he was starting to get these clients who were trying to launch blockchain projects, were trying to have an ICO. And there was a whole list of different sorts of documentation they had to provide, which included a white paper, which included some blogs, which included putting some PRs out for agencies.
We love a good white paper in the crypto world.
Yeah. And I don't know if Market Across was around back then, but probably
2016, I believe, was the genesis block of Market Across.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Might have been 2017.
Yeah. So back then, I started really small, and I wasn't even talking to the PR firm. I was just the guy writing the PR for the project, and then it would be sent off to somebody like Market Across, and maybe some of those went through your pipelines. I started really small, just a little bit of freelance work, then eventually ended up on a call with somebody from the white paper to be edited. These were some guys in Hong Kong. they were working on an interesting project in blockchain compliance, which was a big thing back then. Back then, there were a lot of lawyers who were getting interested in crypto because of the concept of a smart contract, of automating contracts. I was then hired by this really cool guy named Adam Ziri. He was the first or one of the first crypto lawyers in the UK, based in Hong Kong at the time. I worked with him on a project that was doing decentralized KYC, which it was really too early for that. Now there's some cool projects doing that, like ZK Passport on IceTech. Like that's a great example of like seeing something that you were building years ago actually come to fruition, and that's really the spirit of this space, right? Seeing something you're building now come to fruition way in the future, and hopefully you're involved with it. If not, you still need to be happy to see it happen either way, because you're going to find success elsewhere. So I ended up working with them for a couple of years. Then my next job was at Subsquid, which again I was hired because I was looking for a job. A recruiter contacted me on LinkedIn, and I had an interview, then another interview, and then I started working with them, and then I proved myself over the years. I don't know if this is a hot take, but crypto is just another industry. You get a job there and you work. There's a lot of opportunities still. Just look at it as getting a job and working hard, and you can achieve anything.
It is just another industry. Here you are 9 years later, still in the same one.
Is it 9 years? Yeah, wow.
But no, that's cool. So from what you're describing, you would say that like, or tell me if you disagree, of course, but would you say that growth is like entirely a marketing function then? And like for you, it's more of an audience growth thing as opposed to team growth or product reach, for example, which I think could be similar to audience. But which one of those would you say that it's accurate in your case, that it's mostly under the marketing umbrella?
No, I don't think that's accurate. I think the other option described is more accurate. So like to go back to the previous question, why did I get into growth? I think I got into growth. I got into crypto just by happenstance. Like I needed a job and I just ended up here. I got into growth in crypto because I wasn't an engineer. And there's basically this dichotomy. Either you are an engineer and you're doing engineering tasks, or you're not, and you're doing what, for some reason, in crypto people always put into this bucket called marketing. But a lot of those things aren't marketing. With growth, I like to, I really like to think about it the same way as it always has been from the beginning. So the growth profession, it's not that old. It started at Facebook.
Still growing.
Right? So the first ever growth department was at Facebook before it became Meta, led by Chamath Palihapitiya. I always have trouble with his name.
That was pretty good. That's right. Better than I would have done, for sure.
And there's an oft-repeated quote that people can go and look up, but somebody, I think it might have been Sandberg, I don't remember who asked him, so what is your role here? And he said, I just grow things. I'm the head of growing stuff, right? So growth for me is really a strategic role within an organization, looking around and finding things that can be grown. That might be about searching for the lowest hanging fruits at any moment, or it might be about setting up growth loops, which is essentially automating the first task. And that first task, looking for low hanging fruit, that can turn into a lot of different really roles. That could be business development, that could be marketing, that could be running socials in some way, or putting out a tweet at an opportune moment. Although I don't think the head of growth role is necessarily running the social accounts. Like there's people who are much better at that, people who are great at what I call curiosity tweets, which you click, which cause click-throughs, right? Which make people fall into your growth loops that you have set up. So if anybody's new to the field and would like to be in growth, I'd say to them, you should be open to doing all these other non-technical roles in an organization, but long-term, you need to think strategically and be ready to give up different functions to people who are better at them.
Sounds like growth is almost like a more of a mindset than a department in this regard.
It's a mindset, and it's the practice of putting that mindset into everybody else in the organization. And it's just planting seeds in different parts of the organization.
Very cool. Do you ever run into like pushback or boundaries from people when you try to do this? And also, follow-up question, are there any like common misperceptions, or is it, if there is pushback, is it ever just kind of like a one-off?
So I think the main source for pushback, and I've seen this across organizations, is not on the technical side, so to speak. I think the pushback will be on the non-technical side of the organization. And oftentimes, it'll be when they want to do something that you can prove is not actually a good use of resources. And sometimes you need to look at that pushback more strategically, or even recognize the value in it, or recognize that they might be zeroing in on something that they realize and you don't, or something in their perspective that's important that you haven't even come to realize. So if a founder wants to invest some resources into a certain pursuit, I don't know, maybe it's doing an event, doing a sponsorship, or putting a PR out through Market Across, through Chainwire. Maybe it's because there was a certain publicity from a certain stakeholder, right? Maybe it's not about growing the organization in the sense that you think, where you need to, some metric. You need a greater number of impressions on the website. Maybe it's about highlighting an investor you feel might join in on the next round if they were talked about.
Are there like specific checklists that you look for within a team before you decide if you want to join, or before you, like, is there something that you can identify and be like, oh, okay, cool, there's definitely an opportunity for growth here, or of course the flip side of that?
So we're talking small, early stage crypto projects that I generally join them when they're fewer than 20 people or even earlier. And then you're looking at it the same way a pre-seed or a seed investor is looking at it, because that's what you are. You're there, you're investing your time, you're investing your wellness, to be honest. A lot of tech is just trading your wellness for money, or for perhaps long-term value and a bit of experience. I think the way I look at it is very similar to the way that these investors do. I look at the founders, right? Who are the founders? What are their personalities and what are their backgrounds? And what is their chemistry between them? I think it's very important that there be a certain degree of opposition between them. It needs to be a yin and a yang.
It's not the word I thought you were going to say. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. So that might be that one is very technical and one is not technical at all. That might be one is a great communicator and the other is very quiet and calculating. Major contrasting element between them. But at the same time, there needs to be, despite that, some kind of chemistry. We're investing in founders at this stage. When we're pre-product, pre-token, we're in crypto, about it that way. You have to think, if I were at a VC firm and I went internally and was arguing for this project to be invested in, would I feel confident in that? And for projects that I've joined, I've been that way.
No, I can corroborate this because I know when you were at Subsquid, for example, you spoke super highly of the two founders constantly. And they did have their own, or still do have their own kind of areas of expertise and things that they would kind of handle.
Let me just add there, I think there's a ton of value in joining a project this early. It's for a certain personality type. That personality type is not somebody who wants to be a founder. My take is, or be a founder in the next couple of years. If you want to be a founder in the next couple of years, but you're not ready to do it right now, my advice would be to join a organization that already has a very extensive network, and that'll enable you to speak to as many people as possible everywhere. Now, joining an organization this early is also not good for people who are more comfortable in those larger organizational settings. I think it's really for people who have a founder mindset, but they don't want to be limited by all those restrictions that are put on to a founder. So founders are constantly being held accountable to by all the different stakeholders, whether those be investors or really the team, well, the community, really the team, right? When you are an early member of a team, the long-term reward might be lower, but your risk is exceptionally lower, and you can experiment a lot more. And for the growth goal, that's absolutely essential to be able to experiment and to be able to take risks. I would even say that what I do cannot be done by a founder. There's times when I, might say something to a client that a founder should not do. There's times when I'll do that for founders because that can't be said by the founder, or similar things with the community, or testing out a certain aggressive tone with the community. When somebody comes in and they say something stupid, being sort of ironic with them, a founder shouldn't do that, right? For me, I'm in a very comfortable position for myself as the non-founder, and I really respect founders and where they are.
Yeah, it's like if you're on a small team, you still kind of need to expect a similar workload as a founder, but without the stress, I suppose, that they have.
I think sometimes the workload is higher.
There's certain times when the founder actually should step back a bit, even in the early stages. For example, a founder in a relatively early stage project does not necessarily need to be involved with every business development call. That would just take too much brain space from them, depending on what their expertise is.
Well, now you definitely sound like a growth specialist. I know there was like this whole, and I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but there was like there was a woman. She was like a big Silicon Valley tycoon. She was like an HR person early at Facebook. She also worked at Google. She has like an insane resume. I read this article like 15 years ago, so I'm blanking on her name. But her whole thing with growth was like, once you do something really well, it's time for you to delegate that to someone else, so that you can then go on and work on other things. She says it's like inherently against our human nature. Like, just imagine a kid in preschool who builds like a tower out of Legos, and now you tell that kid, okay, cool, give your tower of Legos to Timmy, and now you do something else. So it's kind of similar, where it's like, okay, cool, the founders shouldn't be in the weeds on everything. Once they know what the weeds look like, then they can hand it over and let people grow things in the weeds while they go on and like continue pushing forward.
And once they know what the weeds look like, they might project that view of what the weeds look like on the weeds, and the new grass cutter who's aware of what the new strain of weeds might look like could be left out, right? And they're also just talking to completely different audiences.
By the way, I appreciate you running with me on this weeds analogy.
Right. Yeah, maybe
doing something cool there.
Yeah.
By the way, I know also, and sorry, I'll stop harping on this, and I don't want to touch on anything that you're not comfortable talking about, of course. But I remember you mentioned to me that it was like you were really proud of what you accomplished at Subsquid. And you felt like you had kind of like my work here is done moment, like in terms of growth. What would you say those like early successes kind of, and of course you don't have to give any like specific details that like aren't public yet or anything like that, but like what would you consider a more, cool, this is what early traction looks like, especially as a growth person?
Getting the first people on board who understand what we are building and recognize that what they're building a lot, and seeing that they become extremely loyal because of that. At this stage, that is worth more than anything, and really getting those first very loyal members of the community online. That like there's this often watched video about a group of people who start dancing from a single person, right? This first dancer phenomenon. Getting those first people who are really excited involved in the project, or
there's like cool. The second, the third, and then eventually there's like a turning point, sort of that video.
That video, yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
it's a good one. It's a really good one.
The other thing is when you start to see highly respected people in the industry sell what you're doing for you. The ultimate way to scale your growth is to get ambassadors. And by ambassador, I don't mean this typical crypto ambassador program, right? But to get
ambassador has like a connotation in crypto. But I see what you mean, and it's a good distinction.
When you're at an event and you enter a conversation, and people ask where you're from what project, and you say what the name of the project, and then they're like, "Oh, cool," and they start saying to other people in the vicinity, "Oh, what you're doing," so you don't have to. It feels great first, and second, it's extremely impactful, much better than going and pitching yourself. And a goal of mine in whatever BD capacity I might find myself is to not have to pitch. I really hate pitching, and I'm happy to let other people do it for me.
Well, that's why people like me exist.
Yeah,
or I guess that's why people like me have jobs, I should say.
Yeah, and I think if I ran into you at an event, and there's another couple of people standing around, you'd be like, "Oh, this is David from SpaceComputer, and they're doing," and then I'd hear how you pitch us, and that's also a very good source of feedback on what we're building, how people interpret what we're doing.
It's actually I don't know if you know this this L2, they're called Optimism, and they like you for sure do, but they like I was at their booth in ETH Denver last year or something, and their CMO was just standing there asking people that were coming to the booth. She was asking them, "What you tell me what we do,"
right?
Because she wanted this information. She wanted to know how they were perceived, what kind of impact their branding efforts had. I thought that was really interesting.
That's a great way to utilize a booth. I'll come here to sell with random space.
I know next time I see you at a conference, you're going to be doing it.
If we do a booth, right?
Yeah. But that it brings up an interesting point, because then it's like, okay, cool. So at the end of the day, for her, for example, it's her role to drive the growth. So it's like, okay, cool. How do I drive growth around this thing that people aren't 100% familiar with already, right? Do you face similar challenges where you're like, okay, cool, I not only do I have to describe what I do or what we do, but I have to maybe even conceptually explain the space that we're in. Do you know what I mean?
It goes back to what we just said. So let's say somebody asked me, so what are the use cases up there, right? What are the use cases for this luncheon? I might say to them, what would you like to see in space, right? And then they'll say a few different use cases, and I'll say whether that's possible or with our current technology or not, or how we might achieve that, and then adjust the further answers based on their reaction to it.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's different, by the way. Like, I was talking to my wife about this yesterday.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin, like running nodes up in space, and she's become a bit of like a crypto, like she's more well versed, I would say, than the average person who's not in the industry. But we had a nice conversation about it, and I'm wondering, like, of course that's different from you talking to investors, for example. Mm-hmm. Do you find when talking to investors, like from a growth perspective, if there are certain things that are like immediate turnoffs for them, or if there are things that they're like that they tend to kind of dig into more?
First of all, there's something that I've realized about crypto people who have made it. They become interested in two things. Sometimes one more than the other, but generally longevity, living forever, or as long as possible. And
Brian Johnson.
Right. Every single one of them follows him. And second, space. Go and talk to any of the founders you know, or non-founders, but people who are early organizations, and see what they're thinking about and where they're spending money. It's probably going to be longevity. It's probably going to be, especially ones that are more on the intellectual side, investigating these moonshot pursuits. A lot of the investors are there, and they have a lot of ideas. And the trick is to let them say their ideas and reply with the realities of what you have right now. And like an interesting trick about this is that when you give them the realities, as long as it still allows for the possibility of what they have in mind, it makes you come off as somebody very rational and who has really thought through these problems. So it only puts you in a better light.
Wow, cool. So it sounds like part of what drove, like, one of the unique aspects about being part of the SpaceComputer team is that you're in one of these frontiers that's like on a lot of people's minds. Would you say from a growth perspective, there's, and by the way, of course, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but would you say there's anything else that's specifically unique or like that drew you specifically to SpaceComputer from a growth perspective? Like the one of few things that made you tick, whether it was space itself or the team or a combination of things?
It was probably team, like referring back to what I said a few minutes ago. It was not space, really honest. I don't think about space that much and didn't before. It's very interesting and I'm learning new things every day. I was just on a call learning about how debris is being removed from space in different ways, which is a very important part of what we're going to build and something we have to build and put it out. What attracted me is that it wasn't something that I did previously, but simply it just and it just offered more room for growth, I think, personally, for sure. And I did recognize that there's this massive space economy that everybody's going to be talking about very soon. And it feels a little bit like 2017, right before prices of cryptocurrency went way up, and then everybody was suddenly talking about Bitcoin. I did feel that about the space right before.
I would feel more safe going on like one of these shuttles to space than I would going on a cruise ship, for example. But maybe that says more about me than the technology itself. I will leave you with one final question, and if you have any for me, of course, lay them on me. I always like to ask, especially for the people who want to get into growth, or for space nerds like me back in the day, or just people who are interested in this topic in general, the kids at home, as I like to say. If you have one key takeaway for them or one thing that excites you the most that might resonate with them, please share.
I would direct it towards people who are interested in working in crypto or already do, but it feels a little bit disillusioned. I would say there's still really limitless opportunities within the space for just about anybody, and you'll find them if you just stop believing everything you read on Twitter.
Wow, we can have a whole episode on what people read on Twitter. That's that's awesome. It's good to know there's reality behind the feed.
Okay. So I do have a question for you.
Yay.
So after all these years, how many years are you at Market Cross?
I joined going on 6 years, I guess.
6 years.
I joined right after DeFi summer. November. No, sorry. I guess I just hit the 5-year mark like a couple months ago.
So after all this time and after working with so many projects that have come and gone, some have succeeded brilliantly, others simply disappeared, or maybe there were even, very loud, scandalous downfalls. What keeps you interested and what keeps you engaged?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have to say I'm one of those people that got into crypto full time on purpose. I was working in the I guess Web 2 or traditional tech world. It wasn't any problem with a specific company or anything like that, but it was I just read a book by the CEO of Palantir, and he puts it really well. It's like these thoughts that I had inside, and he articulated it really well, where he said it's like we have this problem in the tech world where the number one thing, like all the smartest minds in tech, for example, like Google or Microsoft or whatever, or Facebook, they're all working on optimizing advertisement click-throughs or whatever. Instead of working on real problems in the world, all these companies are just trying to kind of I don't know. I guess for me, I felt like a tiny cog in a machine that I didn't even really believe in the first place. For me, I was really excited about crypto. Because I saw a huge opportunity. I totally bought into that narrative of okay, cool, maybe this will be the equivalent of tinkering around the internet in the early 90s or whatever. So if in 20 or 30 years or sometime down the line, the crypto industry is still around and we do become the new financial rails or whatever, then I would have assumed I would be safe from a career perspective, as opposed to just kind of like climbing this like tech ladder. And like I feel like in crypto my work is much more tangible in the real world, and the people I meet like are much more ambitious and sometimes less like positive. But we do have like a crazy due diligence process before we do start working with people. So luckily we've avoided a lot of like I've avoided a lot of pitfalls that would make me maybe a bit disillusioned in the world of crypto. But yeah, I would say like what keeps me going is, I mean, first of all, the team here is awesome, and like I guess similar to you, like teams are important to me, and I really can't talk highly enough about them. But also it's like I do still somewhere deep down believe that like crypto is a thing that will, I don't think it'll be super in everyone's face. I don't think everyone will necessarily know they're interacting with crypto or whatever. But I do think that we're seeing it now. Even just in the last 5 years, like the amount of change that there's been. But I will leave off with this. I'll say that it's like, the other big part of what drew me in was the like banking the unbanked, that whole philosophy. And I feel like we don't, as an industry, maybe focus there enough. So if you guys are wondering what to work on, not you specifically, but people listening, that would be really cool. I know cross-border payments are really helping people, which is really cool. Stablecoins are making things easier and less volatile. Bitcoin is still Bitcoining. And then there's a lot of people just trying stuff, which is what it is. It's cool. A lot of innovation, a hint of anarchy, and it's never a dull day, almost. I'm still waiting for a dull day, and it's been 5 years, so... yeah, I guess it's just exciting to me, and I feel like there's more opportunity here than in the tech world.
I do feel that right now people are recognizing to return to that core philosophy about banking the unbanked, or banking the unbankable, or allowing people to be their own bank. Literally, I think like really the most crystal clear way of expressing it. And one thing that I'm really excited about in this project is we are thinking about that problem, and I think this is the one project out there in general, other than Bitcoin and Ethereum, that has come up with a novel way or a novel alternative to offshore banking. First there was offshore banking, then there was crypto, and then there was programmable money, and now there's offshore programmable money. And pretty excited to be working on this.
Cool, man. Yeah, and excited to have you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for taking the time to come and share with us. I know it's like the end of the day for you, and also for me. Well, end of maybe the office day. I know in crypto there's no real end to anything ever. But
it's nice to be in the same time zone as somebody for once.
Yeah. And I hope you take me up on that lunch offer this week or next, because I'd love to sit down and continue chatting. So thanks again for coming. I had a great time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. And tons of luck to you and to SpaceComputer. We'll keep rooting for you, and we'll keep following you wherever you go.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.